Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Real Science Exchange, the podcast where leading scientists and industry professionals meet over a few drinks to discuss the latest ideas and trends in animal nutrition. Achieving elite component production requires alignment across nutrition, management, and mindset. This panel focuses on how high-performing producers execute, adapt, and manage risk. We're here with Corey Geiger. Corey, you moderated I should say first, you're with CoBank. Would you say you're an analyst? Is that what your title is?
Analyst, economist, and just enjoy dairy.
Just everything, exactly. We all love dairy. And you moderated a panel discussion today titled How We Achieve More Than 7 Pounds a Day of Milk Components. And you assembled a panel of dairy farmers from, I guess, locally here in Ohio, Michigan, Indiana. Anybody from Indiana here?
I live in Indiana. I work in Ohio. So
if you will, kind of give us an idea of kind of what was the genesis of this idea and some of the key things that you wanted to pull out of this conversation.
Well, Scott, I think the big picture here, and these dairy producers that are with us and nutritionists, is milk components are really driving the equation, not only on the dairy farm, but in milk processing. 90% of dairy farmers are paid on multiple component pricing. Top two components are butter, fat, and protein. And, when it comes to cheese, 49%, almost 50% of all milk components go into cheese production. But we have a host of wonderful dairy products. Cottage cheese are growing double digits. Yogurt is growing double digits. Milk protein shakes, or what some in the industry would call dairy nutritionals, are growing double digits. And they all need milk components. And so when you're at the Tri-State Nutrition Conference, it's natural to lead off with a panel on achieving 7 pounds or greater components, and the dairy farmers here that are with us are pushing past 7 pounds now.
So, Corey, would you mind introducing the guests you had on the panel?
So we'll start with the dairy producers. On my far left, we have Brock Peters with MVP Dairy in Salina, Ohio. And then to the right of Scott, we have Scott VonGunten with Convoy Dairy of Convoy, Ohio. He already alluded that he's on the Indiana, Ohio line. And then Tom Oesch with Swiss Lane Dairy in Alto, Michigan. So technically a little bit central western Michigan with us as well.
Balchem has invested decades perfecting the art of nutrient encapsulation. And now, new AminoShure XL is setting a new standard, delivering 35% more metabolizable lysine than leading competitors. With AminoShure XL, you can provide your cows with a more consistent and higher quality source of metabolizable lysine, leading to improved and more dependable results. A recent meta-analysis found that feeding rumen-protected lysine led to an increase in milk fat percentage and 4.4 more pounds of energy-corrected milk. Feed new AminoShure XL to your cows and have confidence that you're using the most consistent, reliable, and cost-effective source of lysine on the market today. Learn more at balchem.com/XL.
And I think one of the big stories was how components have changed over time on our dairies, and we kind of let off with that. And Brock, if you wouldn't mind talking about a little bit at MVP Dairy, how components have changed during your tenure on the farm.
So as I mentioned on the panel, MVP is still relatively a new farm, right? 7.5 years in production, but we've seen steady increases, from day one. But hey, we're up 5%, a little over 5%, as today as we were roughly a year ago. But hey, we're toying with fluid milk in the low triple digits right now, with total pounds of solids consistently over the 7.5 pound mark. We're trying to make our march towards 8 pounds. Eventually the goal is to hopefully get there.
Mm-hmm. And if you catch that in the audience, low triple digits means over 100 pounds of milk per cow per day, which is a big number. But looking, past that, with higher butter fat and protein content in the milk. And then Tom joined us from Swiss Lane Dairy, and multi-site dairy, actually have 4 dairy farms, but really kind of consistent on the theme of components, and genetics, you believe, is a big driver of that, as well as nutrition. But talk a little bit about your component story.
Yeah, I remember. So I kind of cut my teeth in the dairy industry selling feed, and when I was just getting out of college, and I can remember, trying to get herds over a 3.5 at 90 pounds was a challenge, right? And
different. It was almost like a lifetime ago.
It seems like
or a different lifetime.
Yeah. So, and today, and I went back to the family dairy in 2010, 2011, and still probably we're just starting to flirt with that 4% fat range. And today, our cows are, depending on which our herds are kind of segmented a little different, but all over a 4 or 5, and some pushing on that 5% fat mark. And, proteins come up a little bit to 3.5 probably average on our herds. And, it's just been, I think, the national herd genetically I think everybody is focused. I mean, because we've all gotten paid for components, combined fat and protein, I think has been a big bull selection, sire selection criteria, more than, pounds of milk. And we see it even in, like I was talking on the panel, even the animals that we purchase that, we're not trying to buy scrub animals, but still, you expect to buy in animals and maybe see a dip in genetics, but really, I mean, they often come in and compete with our own cattle on a component standpoint.
Yeah, as we turn the conversation to Scott, I think we have to remember that these are Holstein herds we're talking about. These are not Jersey herds.
They are looking like jerseys, though. They really are.
Just got to get the can of paint out. But, yeah. But what's coming out of the udder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott VonGunten from Convoy Dairy, you talked about, and earlier when I spoke, one of the affiliated dairies was Oakfield Corners, but the numbers mirrored exactly what's happening at Convoy. You were talking about the component levels from the 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and then your older cows. If you want to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think the genetics, obviously the elite of the elite stay at Jonathan's farm, but I think genetics spread across the 3 farms in New York and ours are very similar. The conventional semen we're using are all bulls that are lambs bulls, so we are truly using a large majority of their genetics. We do get a lot of embryo heifers too that maybe didn't quite make the grade, so yeah. There could be animals on the farm that were embryo heifers that were out of their bulls and their cows. So, I mean, their genetics are pretty deep, and it's pretty obvious from how many states away that the results are very similar.
Mm-hmm. And to bring the audience up to speed there, the Convoy Dairies, part of the Oakfield Corners and Lamb Farms, and that family just was named the 2026 World Dairy Expo Industry Person of the Year, or Dairy Producers of the Year, excuse me. And so quite an innovative dairy farm there. Ryan, there's a genetic story part of this, and there is certainly a big nutrition part of it, and nutrition has many aspects. What have you been seeing on your journey? Tom alluded to the fact he cut his teeth working in nutrition. You do it every day, but this has been quite the evolution.
Yeah, for sure. So I absolutely remember when my first 3 herds broke 6 pounds. That was I've been blessed to work for Cargill for over 20 years. I'll be 21 this spring, and we had a 6-pound club, and then Cargill eventually made a 7-pound club, and now they absolutely need to have an 8-pound club. But it's been a steady incline, and the one graph that was shown there in your talk there too. I mean, you can just see it the last 5 to 10 years, it's really accelerated. But yeah, we the number of herds that we even have a few 2Xs that have broken 7 at times, and or sit there close to the yearly average at that. And I had a year ago I had my first herd break 8, and this winter we had 4 of them for at least a brief moment touch 8. So it's absolutely continues to unleash potential, and it's basically like Brock said in the panel. I mean, these are high-powered athletes that we're just trying to support. So,
You talked about the acceleration of components. I think if my math is right in my head, in the last 15 years, we've had 17% movement in butterfat production in this country, and half of it's come the last 5 years. Half. So
wow.
I
Yep.
can.
Yes.
That's why you got to move your club categories
Yeah.
because it's like a rocket ship right now.
Yeah. Ryan, we were having a conversation a couple weeks ago with Dr. Van Amberg and about the fact that we've had this rapid improvement in genetics, and we really don't know what the requirements for these cows are, honestly, right? I mean, NASEM came out about 4 years ago, and it was probably behind when it came out. So what kind of adjustments have you had to make nutritionally as you go from 6 to 7 and now on to 8 pounds of solids per cow?
Yeah, so, I mean, essentially we've learned a lot about fatty acid types. I think that's the energy demands has been a huge part of it, and amino acid support. So those would be the two biggest buckets, but it all starts in the rumen, and it's amazing when you get the rumen right, how much potential you unleash. And that starts with having the right amount of effective fiber. In Cargill, we call it a UNDF 240 number, and we start there, and then we get the rumen paired right, and we build from there. And then it's just an investment in density, depending on what the cow's demands are. And once again, we don't know what the top is. We continue to challenge and invest based on what the market's willing to support, and we get surprised sometimes too. So.
I think sometimes when we work in the dairy industry every day, we take for granted the dynamics of dairy right now. You know, at the Cobank, I'm with the Knowledge Exchange Division, so there's 11 people like me working in different areas. Animal protein isn't changing. Like the protein content of a steak or a chicken breast or a pork or a chicken egg or now there is some variation in soybeans, but you know, a lot of these things are kind of dynamic, and when you talk about when nutrition standards come out and how these cows are changing over time, this is a very dynamic space.
Yeah.
It's evolving quickly.
Yeah, without a doubt.
You know, Tom brought up, you know, we were talking about different facilities, and maybe each of us should go through and talk about our facilities. You know, Brock's facility is a little bit newer and has being tunnel ventilated, and then we come down across the table. What Tom's has got, you know, things that would have been top of the line maybe 20 years ago, but now need to be updated. And how we get performance out of our cows in these facilities is a little different. Why don't you talk about your barn? And
Yeah, so we've got 6, I call them push-pull tunnel ventilated barns, right? So we have an air inlet on the north side of the barn, so we're sucking air into there. We're also injecting air from the sides, but then we have fans on the exhaust wall, right? So we're trying to bring in as much adequate fresh air as we can, you know, keep those air exchanges within reason, but give those cows the best environment as we can, not only in the summertime, but also in the winter, right? To, reduce pneumonia incidences and things like that, right? Because these cows want to perform 365 days a year, so let's give them the environment that we can. We also have within that facility plenty of bunk line soakers in the holding pens, just things that we can keep them cool, to really boost those evaporative cooling effects on those cows, from the outside. On a hot summer day, we might be a degree or so cooler inside, but we have a steady wind flow, which helps both, cows are never bunching. There's almost zero flies within our freestall barns just because those flies don't like that wind speed, right? So flies are around maybe the outside of the facility, manure areas, things like that, but not affecting cows or production, right? So we can just let those cows do what they want to do, and then they get milk 3 times a day on an 80-stall De Laval rotary parlor, So we're fortunate there where we just milk our cows and load milk on direct load tankers and head it 20 miles down the road to we sell our milk to Danone, which is 20 miles away. So it's a nice, easy drive for our trucks.
And by coincidence, Convoy Dairy also ships to Danone, but tell a little bit about your farm as well.
We're a 6-row barn, or 6-row or 3-row freestall barn. We have 3 full-length barns and then 1 behind the parlor. I think the original facility was built 2001, 2003. Barns have been added in 2011 and 13 when Lambs bought it. We've added on to the end of those barns, tried to design the barns a little bit wider, a little bit taller within reason. Definitely not up to today's standards that Brock has. We are in the presence of building a brand new facility, be similar to what Brock is managing right now. I mean, we tried to do what we can. We've widened some free stalls out. We've moved the outside walls a couple feet out to give more lunge space. So just trying to take what we have and make it as useful as what we can with what we have.
And move some air.
Yeah, I mean,
we've
we
a lot of air. Yep.
Originally had fans over the feed bunks and the head-to-head stalls, put fans over the outside. The one owner said, not going to do any difference. And he said, I don't normally eat crow, but I'm eating crow today. He said, it makes a big difference. I can see it. Your milk production, repo in the summer. So, I mean, yeah, we all have different facilities, but I'm sure we're all trying to maximize the best of what we can. Because like we talked about, these cows are athletes. I think sky's the limit. I think the biggest reason that these cows don't perform is because of people. Nutrition, cow comfort, things that we hold the cows back, not the cows.
And consistency,
Yeah.
to some degree. Because, Tom, you talked about that. There's 3 teams every day milking cows at your 4 dairies, right?
Yeah, they get a different experience, new and unique experience from each shift, right? It's not the goal, but I mean, it's inevitable, even with 3 really good crews, from how hard a guy grabs a cow on a strip to, how long they take to wipe the cow. It's just, it's hard to, and especially in a parallel parlor to have 3 absolutely consistent experiences for that cow every day. So, it's interesting just listening to you guys. We get a lot of tours on our dairies to kids and just talking to people who don't know about dairy over the years. And in the 1950s in the United States, our cows gave somewhere around 150 million pounds of milk or something that year. And this year it's going to be, and that was on 22 million cows. And this year in the United States, we're going to milk, 9.5 million cows and get more than double the milk out of those cows. And that's fluid milk. That's not even component corrected.
Yeah.
So, and I think to Scott's point, I mean, I think we're not done. That doesn't mean like, oh, we've arrived and the cow's given as much as she can. We'll do that again in the next 50 years, I believe.
Or we may do it in the next 30, because I
Right.
think the pace of change
It's
is...
going fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let me add on too. Like last summer was just brutal in the Midwest. Probably one of the worst we've seen in 10 to 15 years. Someone could fact check that officially, but I mean, it was brutal. And so it's created quite a repro slump that we just hadn't seen in a lot of summers. And yet you could absolutely go facility to facility and see the drasticness of the drop. So, a facility like what Brock's managing might have been minimized to 5 points of preg rate when some farms was up to 20 just for that. We had 8 weeks of weather that was very hard on cattle. And with all these rumination systems and activity monitors, we have the data to show what it did to cows that we didn't have, 5 to 10 years ago. And it, like SCR, for example, has got a heat stress minutes by day. And just to watch what these cows go under pressure-wise in these facilities was pretty phenomenal. And so to all these guys' point, I mean, the more we support them and take change out of their life, the more they're going to accelerate. And dairies are so much about getting a freight train roaring down the tracks. And once you got that train going the right direction, it's just like, how can we make it go faster and faster and faster? So.
Well, I think kind of add on to that, I think about our facilities. We have a bunch of tired old facilities, some 6-row barns, and I look at the ventilation in them, and the airflow is fine, whatever. We can move air through them, but we don't because, we've listened to ventilation people for, 50 years tell us, well, Years ago you needed 36-inch fans 60 feet apart, and that was going to be adequate over a head-to-head stall, right? If you put a double 36-inch fan on 60 feet apart, that's what some of our barns still have that in them, right? And we know now, and even today, some of the ventilation companies will tell you, well, if you put an 84-inch fan, it'll push air 72 feet, and it won't. It's not going to move air at 8 miles an hour. Is that about what you're at, Brock?
Yeah, we're going to average that,
Yeah.
Yep.
To get 8 miles an hour at the end of that 72 feet off of an 84-inch fan is not going to happen. You got to have those 84-inch fans like closer than 60 feet apart.
Well, at our facility, I would say we designed it and built it to the best of technology 8, 9, 10 years ago when we were putting the plan together. And then here 3 years ago, our ventilation in the summer flat out sucked. When wind was blowing from the southwest real hard, we were starving our barns for air, right? It would blow hard enough that it would actually bend the fan blades back to an extent and close the shutter. So our airflow essentially stopped for a split second when we had a 30, 40 mile an hour wind gust. And we're like, hey, this just can't happen anymore, right? So we went in, put in an upgrade. We added, I think, 60 exhaust fans, and then we added 48 inlet fans to just overpressurize those barns so we can have air to actually move out. And then we put another, 7 or 8 fans in our holding pen just to keep cows cool because, hey, we thought we built the Cadillac of facilities, and, hey, we did in most facets, but, ate a little humble pie there and realized, wow, we had to put some upgrades into it already. And, hey, I think performance last summer was really the first summer that everything kind of worked well from reproduction and fans and everything. And, hey, to Ryan's point, it was the worst summer in Ohio that I've experienced in about 9 years. And hey, that our milk production dropped, yes, but it came back a lot faster than most. It didn't drop as hard as just far as others did. And repro statistics came right back, So we feel like we have a good handle on heat abatement at this point now.
I was, during my presentation, I was talking about the fact, we've pulled back on dairy cow culling by over 500,000 cows. And one of the things that Scott from Convoy Dairy said that got him really excited was talking about transition cow performance. So if we're pulling back on culling, it's intuitive that our cows are getting older. But why don't you walk through what you shared with the audience, Scott?
In our transition, we probably, years ago we had access to a highway mat straw where they were after the long straw and the chaff they didn't want. So we started implementing that in our close-up diets and saw increases in intake, which led to less metabolic problems. So we ran that for several years, and then we had I don't know, Ryan, you might remember the year it was, but we had some really wet, I think summer, the straw was really nasty, had molds in it, and it was doing more damage than good. So we thought, what can we do to get this straw the same all the time? So we bought a tub grinder. So every day the straw was the same length. It doesn't matter if we were, before you were running in a mixer, it maybe ran an hour or the feeder was in a hurry and it ran a half hour. Well, then the next day, all that was left was long pieces. So, it brought consistency to us no matter, it kind of took the employee equation out of it. So the ration's the same as the day that, the morning we deliver it till the next morning when we pick up the refusals. And like I said, we'll easily push 35 pounds of dry matter on our close-up cows, which in return allows those cows to calve in, eat tons of milk cow feed, reduces our metabolic issues. Our 0 to 60 call and dead is annually about 5%, which equates to us running a 25% call rate, which allows us to keep older cows around. And I think nowadays with the cost of heifers, and that is even more imperative that people need to look at this, to keep cows around. It's been a big game changer for us.
Yeah. Let me add on to that too. So there's a couple, we're talking on a panel talking about making more pounds of solids. And, Yeah, one absolute way to do that is cull your way to a higher average, right? And the industry forever turned over a lot of cows, and in some situations still does a lot. But I touch a lot of dairies, and it's just amazing how many guys we can run in that 25 to 30% cull rate or less, and get where we want to be. And it just opens up so much profitability in that, especially with the cost of replacements for sure, but it just allows you to raise less heifers. It allows you to expand if you want to. It allows you to make more black calves, beef on dairy calves that are worth as much as any sellable calf on the market. Allows you to cull the right cows when you don't break a transition cow. You get to choose the mid and late lactation cow that's fleshy, that's going to sell for top dollar. And there's just so many dollars wrapped up into transitioning cows well.
It's interesting, Corey, you talked about we culled 500,000 less cows last year than the year before.
Well, since August of 2023 till end of last year.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, reading some of the marketing, I guess, experts, they thought that we were going to see a dip in milk per cow because cull rates got lower across the country, and we didn't.
We didn't. It's an interesting discussion to have with people outside of dairy farmer circles, because why is that happening? What we're discussing here on this panel right now. That's why it's happening.
Kind of curious. You guys are doing an awful lot right. If you're getting 7 pounds of solids per cow, you're doing a lot of things right. We do something called the Real Producer Exchange, where we interview farmers from all over the country and actually all over the world. And one of the questions we always like to ask is, so you're doing a lot of things right. What's one thing that you tried that didn't work? You guys willing to share any of that? Maybe not.
The list is long.
I would say,
Which one?
I found out a while ago that most pictures on my phone aren't of good things. They're always of things that are bad. But yeah, so I'm sure that's a real long list,
Yeah.
But hey, our mentality is fail fast, right?
Yeah.
If there's something you want to try it. If it doesn't work, abandon it and move over, pivot and do something else.
Yeah, makes sense.
One that kind of sticks in my mind for whatever reason. In 2011, we put in 8 Lely robots, and I don't think it was like, in hindsight, maybe wish we'd have done something different. Really like the performance of the cows in those 8 boxes, but there's a reason we're not putting any more in. But the one thing that we did that was a real utter failure was the no pun intended, the automated feed pusher. It might work for some people. We were not good enough mechanics to keep that stinking thing. And it seems like I've seen a lot of those on dairies. I don't know if you guys have tried different ones, but you love the idea of that on a dairy. Like, you look at the hours spent pushing feed, and it's like, man, if we could just automate that process. But so far, there doesn't seem to be an automated thing out there that works on a high production dairy with a big pile of feed.
There's a lot of parked ones across the country
Right.
that I'm very certain of.
Yep.
Was the same true of the robots? Just a maintenance issue, or
Yeah,
other
the
issues?
robots, it's at upfront capital cost. When you look at, we put 8 in, and we thought that was going to be like a modular design where we could add one at a time. But then, we're watching the numbers, and we get more milk per cow out of those. And I think they're probably what's best if you look at for the cow, the individual cow, but to try to sustainably grow a herd with that high upfront cost, and then the operating cost of them is significantly higher than a parlor.
Yeah.
So it's,
Okay.
one of those things that we've always, one of our core values is light years ahead, right? Like, my dad and uncles and even my grandpa embraced technology and genetics and all these things early. So we were like, oh, this fits our core values. And, there's a lot of good that came out of it. But in hindsight, we could have probably built a rotary parlor for what we paid for the robots at that time. Couldn't now, but anyway.
Any other key learnings, Corey, what, as you went through the panel discussions earlier today?
I think maybe bringing this to a crescendo here, we're talking about over 7 pounds, but I think it'd be good to hear from them from Scott and Tom and Brock, what your goals are the next 3 to 5 years. And, producers get paid on pounds, processors process pounds. So I want to be real clear on that. But if you look at the biological limit, say in New Zealand, the average New Zealand cow is at a 5% butter fat and a 4% protein. And I mean, we're not there. So, but you got to multiply that by pounds. So there's clearly a lot of upside here. I think the cow genetics here in the U.S. are as best as anywhere in the world class. And so I'd ask what the goal is on the horizon, not only for the farmers, but Ryan, the herds you're working with.
Yeah. So, we talk a lot about component efficiency. So that's making the total, unleashing the potential like we talked, and then doing it efficiently. And once again, as I said earlier, so much of that is about, does the market support us investing to a certain level? We can manipulate that further nutritionally for sure. I'd take it a little bit too. I think, we talked a lot in the panel there. You guys did about forages, forage percents. I work with the whole spectrum of dairies, from ones that grow zero legume in diet or have zero legume in diets to herds we feed 10, 12 pounds of dry matter, for example. And we got herds from 35, 40% forage to 60% forage. But the one thing that absolutely works and works time and time again is to have large amounts of high quality forage. And as these herds get larger and larger, sometimes that's not that easy to do. Sometimes weather doesn't cooperate. That could be drought related. That can be just the ability to make it consistently well at springtime. Weather that won't quit raining, for example. But there's a lot of forgiveness in having fermented, stable forage and being out in front of that curve. And this year, it screamed it to me as a nutritionist. We've talked for years about trying to get 90 or 120 days of carryover on corn silage, for example. And a lot of my clients have heard me say this already the last couple months, but it was very evident to me that our silage has turned more like the second half of February into March this year, where a lot of times I would have said that's Thanksgiving to Christmas. I mean, it was literally 2+ months later than I would say as a historical normal. And it just screamed to me, why do we try to get carryover? Why do we try to get, you can do the best job in the world, have things ensiled well, right moisture, processed well, packed well, it's fermenting well, and yet they fed the best and really started to turn once they had time to cook for that long. And maybe that's different in 2026's crop. But at the end of the day, the more out in front of the curve we can get, the more inventory we can get, the more consistency we can get, we will support cows at a higher level for sure. So,
yeah, I mean, hey, our goals are to get to 8 pounds and surpass that, right? I mean, hey, maintain low call rates and still maintain a very competitive cost of production. To piggyback off of Ryan, there it is about forage. We just talked about mistakes, and a glaring one that comes to my mind is I put up some really wet triticale in 2024. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. There was just no great weather window, and it had to come off the field at some point. So yeah, hopefully Mother Nature cooperates this spring here in about 3 or 4 weeks. We can get tread off and corn in and make really good cutting of first cut haylage, and set ourselves up, well, give us a good base for some good quality forage for 2026.
Yeah, I think 8 pounds is easily achievable with the genetics. Is can we match the facilities, the feed, and all that to make it happen on a consistent basis? Yeah, maybe you can tip it one year. Can you hit it next year? Economics is going to play a part of it. I think Ryan kind of alluded about it earlier. I mean, yeah, we could all probably get there with extremely high call rate, go out and buy a bunch of expensive cows and do that, but it's not economical to get that. But yeah, I think all of us would agree we'd like to achieve 8 pounds and be economically in our favor to achieve that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything these guys said. Forage quality is just huge, and I think probably on our dairy, we purchased a couple dairies with that needed investment in feed storage, poor bunkers, and all that. So, trying to manage the capital cost of feed facility improvements to the capital cost of heat abatement to I still can fit a few more cows in this barn, and they're going to make me more money than either the feed pad or the or the fan. So I'm going to buy her first, and then, but yeah, I agree with Scott. I think the cows in our barn today have the potential to make 8 pounds. We're not doing that today, but the potential's there. It's up to us to manage our labor and forages and get the facilities up to par, and I think the cows will definitely, they have the potential there.
Let me add one more thing on there too. I mean, I think we spend so much money in this industry on like mitigation of unstable feedstuffs. I mean, it's, we try to do all the right behaviors, whether it be in the harvesting side of things or in storage for sure in the process, coming in, but then pitching piles, covering a certain way, defacing and blending together. But there's just we spend a lot of money in additives and labor and time and that trying to offset the negatives. And so everything we can do on the front end absolutely helps for sure too. Somebody asked me this morning on a totally separate call while I was driving up here, do you believe in some of these rumen adjusting type additives, and my answer was you never go wrong investing in the right products that can further stabilize a rumen. It's just a matter of evaluation of response versus investment cost to do that. But boy, I mean, if we can continue to find ways to make that rumen more stable, we will win every last time. And that so much starts in the forage base, that starts in storage, have enough footprint that you can do it the right way. Get enough equipment there that you can do it the right way. I mean, there's just so much value in getting that as a foundational piece right. So,
stable and consistency, they're synonyms last time I checked, and they're so important to this entire story on high milk components.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it all starts with the forage. It's well said, Ryan, and I think it's one thing that we don't talk about enough. As nutritionists, we talk about everything other than, starting with the forage, and we probably ought to start there and figure out how to do that the best way we can. So, gentlemen, this has been a great conversation. Corey, you did a nice job putting together a nice panel here and leading the discussions. As we close out, and I know you guys have kind of discussed some of this already, but imagine somebody's asking you, they want to get to where you're at. They want those 7 pounds and then going forward to 8 pounds of solids. What advice would you give them? Just,
5 cents might not seem like much until you're saving 5 cents per cow per day. Then it really adds up. New AminoSure XM precision-release methionine provides the optimal combination of cost, feed stability, rumen stability, and intestinal release to deliver the best cost per unit of available methionine on the market today.
I'd tell him to go talk to Brock and Scott.
And Scott, then what would you tell him?
I always tell everybody I have the same tools that Brock has or Tom has in my disposal to have. It's just I see to it that everything gets done all the time. Maybe not all the time, but close to it. I don't have a magic bullet. I don't have, I just see to it that things get done. And if you want it, you got to put the time into it. You don't have to be the smartest person. You talk like, I always like to use Tom Brady. He's not the most athletic quarterback out there, but that guy puts in so much time and study stuff. Sit back, watch your cows, see what's going on, put the time in. That's what's going to get you there. If you're not willing to do that, you're not going to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Consistency. I heard that in your conversation there, back to what Corey was saying. Brock?
Yeah, no, it's consistency, it's details, it's systems, right? It's making sure your labor force is trained the right way. It's just all about all of those things that are intertwined in a dairy, making sure they click and connect every single day, right? Hey, nothing's going to be perfect every day, but be better tomorrow than you were today.
Yeah, great comments. Ryan, glad we invited a nutritionist on board. You added a nice element to this. Any final words you'd like to share?
Well, I'll just piggyback off that consistency. I say this to my clients all the time, like no one expects every process on every dairy to be perfect all the time, but I always say there's an acceptable standard to every process on the dairy. It could be a start time, a drop time. You referenced, Tom, there in the thing, but like drop times, it could be how we prep cows in the parlor. It could be repro protocols and just that. But every process on a dairy, and there's thousands of them, have an acceptable standard that we have to operate to. And what percentage of the time are we above that acceptable standard? Like that's what I challenge everybody back. And to Scott said it there too. It's just are we achieving that the appropriate amount of time? There's going to be failure days. Things are going to break down. Weather events are going to happen. People are not going to show up for work. You fill in the blank. But what percentage of the time are we above an acceptable standard? And if you can consistently answer that, we're there on a huge percentage of what we do every day. We're going to get momentum. And dairies are 100% about momentum, roaring down the tracks. So.
Momentum. And the other theme here was communication. Scott brought up the Tom Brady. What does Tom Brady do in the huddle? Is everybody on the team, on the farm, row in the same direction so that you can have success? And Tom earlier brought up about bilingual communication and bringing the right people in there so that everybody's trained up. And those are all the little things that make greatness.
Yeah. Well said, Corey. Thanks again for bringing this panel together. It's been great, been a lot of fun. To the audience out there, thank you for coming along with us once again. Hope you learned something. Hope you had some fun. And I hope to see you next time here at Real Science Exchange, where it's always happy hour and you're always among friends.
We'd love to hear your comments or ideas for topics and guests, so please reach out via email at anh.marketing@balchem.com with any suggestions, and we'll work hard to add them to the schedule. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating on your way out. You can request your Real Science Exchange t-shirt in just a few easy steps. Just like or subscribe to the Real Science Exchange and send us a screenshot along with your address and t-shirt size to anh.marketing@balchem.com. Balchem's Real Science Lecture Series of webinars takes place on the first Tuesday of every month, with the top research and nutrition topics that will impact your business. We also include small ruminant, monogastric, and companion animal-focused topics throughout the year. Visit balchem.com/realscience to see the upcoming topics and to register for future webinars. You can also access past webinars and search for the topics most important to you.